The courtroom was
Tell us what
crowded.
happened that day.
People filled every
I don't want
seat,
to.
their
You
eyes
must tell the
wide
truth.
with curiosity and amusement. The walls seemed taller than usual, echoing the murmurs of the spectators. At the center of it all stood a young black boy, no more than 12, his small frame trembling slightly, but his eyes burning with determination. Clutched in the hand of a tall, menacing man was the boy's mother, her face pale, her lips pressed tight with fear. The man laughed, a deep, cruel laugh that sent chills through the room. "And what will you do, little boy?" he mocked. "You think you can stop me?" The boy took a deep breath. He could feel the court laughing, the whispers, the doubt all around him. But he did not back down. His voice, though small, was steady and strong. "Let go of my mom," he said, staring the man in the eye, "and I'll make you stand." A roar of laughter echoed through the courtroom. Judges leaned back in their chairs, shaking their heads. Lawyers whispered to each other. Spectators smirked, some even openly mocking the boy. No one took him seriously. After all, how could a boy, so young and fragile, face a grown man who had already terrorized so many? The boy's mother looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. She wanted to tell him to step back, to save himself, but she also knew that this boy, her son, was not like other children. He had a fire inside him that no one could extinguish. The man holding her tightened his grip. "You think you can control this, huh?" he sneered. "You're just a child. The court is laughing with me, boy. You are alone." But the boy didn't flinch. He slowly lifted his chin, and his gaze hardened. "I'm not alone," he said. "You will see." A hush fell over the courtroom. The laughter stopped, but curiosity remained. Everyone leaned forward, wondering what this small boy could possibly do. How could he ever hope to stand up to a man like that? In that silence, the boy's mind raced. He remembered the hours he had spent practicing in secret, the plans he had made when no one was watching. He had trained himself to stay calm, to think faster than anyone else, and to notice details others missed. Today, all of that would matter. The man noticed the change in the boy. He frowned. "What are you thinking, little one?" he asked. The boy didn't answer. Instead, he shifted slightly, keeping his eyes on the man. The spectators noticed the tension growing. Something was different about this boy. Something in his calmness made the air heavier. Suddenly, the boy spoke again. "If you don't let go of her now, you will regret it." The court laughed again, louder this time. "Regret it?" one judge muttered. "This is ridiculous. He is just a child." But the boy wasn't just a child. He was determined, and he had something inside him that could not be measured by size or age. The man tightened his grip on the mother and stepped closer. "You will do nothing," he said, a sneer on his face. "The court is on my side. Everyone is laughing at you. You are nothing." The boy didn't move, but inside his heart was pounding. He knew the next few minutes could change everything. He had to act, but carefully. One wrong move could put his mother in real danger. Yet he had promised her he would protect her, and he intended to keep that promise. Around them, the courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Even the spectators who had been laughing moments ago were now silent, watching the boy closely. There was a strange electricity in the room, a feeling that something unexpected was about to happen. The boy's eyes flicked to his mother. She nodded ever so slightly, giving him the courage he needed. He straightened his back and spoke louder this time, his voice echoing through the courtroom. "You think I am small. You think I am weak. But if you don't let her go, you will see what I can do." A murmur ran through the crowd. People exchanged glances. Some were curious, some nervous. The man laughed again, but there was a shadow of doubt in his eyes now. Something about the boy's words, the way he spoke, made the man hesitate just a little. And in that hesitation, the boy saw his chance. He didn't move yet, but he prepared. Every muscle in his body was ready. Every thought focused. He had to wait for the perfect moment. The courtroom held its breath. The mother's face was pale, her hands trembling. The man smirked, still thinking the boy was powerless. But deep down, he felt something he had never felt before. Uncertainty. And that uncertainty was the first crack in the man's armor. The boy's heart raced, but he stayed calm. The next few minutes would be the test. He would need courage, speed, and cleverness. The court would watch, and history would remember these moments. Because no one in that room realized it yet. that this small boy, with nothing but his courage and his love for his mother, was about to attempt the impossible. After the courtroom laughter faded, the black boy did not move. He stayed still, pretending to be small and harmless. But inside, his mind was working faster than ever. He could feel the man's eyes on him, sharp and suspicious, like a predator sizing up its prey. The boy knew he had only one chance, and he had to make it perfect. A flashback hit him like lightning. Weeks ago, in a small, dusty room at the back of his house, he had trained himself in secret. He had spent hours learning not just to think fast, but to act fast. He had watched videos, read books, and practiced small tricks that no one would expect. Nobody in his neighborhood, nobody in school, not even his friends, knew about his little secret. And now, that secret could save his mother. He remembered how his father had taught him one simple rule. Brains over strength, son. The mind is stronger than any muscle. The boy smiled briefly at the memory. He would need that rule now more than ever. The man holding his mother paced slowly. "Why are you just standing there?" he asked, his voice sharp. "Say something. Do something. Or admit you are weak." The boy shook his head. "I am not weak," he said quietly. "But you don't know what I can do." The man laughed, cruel and loud, turning his mother so that she faced him directly. "You have no plan, little one. Everyone here knows it." But the boy did have a plan that no one expected. He had noticed something crucial earlier. The man had a habit. Every time he moved too quickly, his wrist twitched, almost like a warning. And he had a favorite side of the room he liked to lean against. Small details, but details that could become advantages. The boy shifted slightly, careful not to show his intention. His eyes scanned the courtroom, noting every exit, every obstacle, every person's movement. He needed to be ready for anything. He whispered to himself, just loud enough for no one else to hear. "If I distract him, I can get closer. If I confuse him, I can make him hesitate. And if he hesitates, I can act." Suddenly, he thought about the simplest tool he could use. Something overlooked, something ordinary, but powerful in his hands. It was not a weapon in the usual sense, but a clever trick. A distraction that would make the man underestimate him. The court had already laughed at him, and that laughter could now become his ally. The boy's mother looked at him, eyes wide and terrified. He gave her a small nod, a signal that she should stay calm. He had taught her this in small ways before. They could communicate without words, just glances and tiny gestures. She nodded back, trusting him. The man noticed a shift in her eyes and frowned. "What are you two whispering about?" he asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. The boy smiled faintly, pretending to be scared. "Nothing," he said, "just thinking." Thinking was exactly what he had been doing, and now, everything was ready. He had calculated the timing, studied the patterns, and even predicted the man's reactions. Every second of delay, every flicker of doubt in the man's mind would be his advantage. Then, as if by accident, the boy let a small object drop from his pocket. It was tiny, unnoticeable at first. It clattered softly on the floor. The man jumped slightly, his focus breaking for a fraction of a second. The crowd gasped, and whispers rippled through the courtroom. That was the first move. A small step, but it was enough to prove that the boy was not ordinary. He was clever, unpredictable, and ready to challenge the impossible. The judges leaned forward in their seats. The man tried to regain control, tightening his grip on the mother. But his eyes betrayed the first signs of doubt. The boy had planted it, slowly, subtly, and with patience. In that brief moment, the boy knew he could not fail. Every detail mattered now. Every heartbeat, every blink, every movement could change the outcome. He had planned for this moment, rehearsed it in his mind countless times, and now, the time to act was almost here. The crowd didn't understand yet, but the tension was building. The boy's plan was not about brute strength or aggression. It was about using the mind, using patience, and turning the court's laughter into his weapon. And he was ready. The boy took a deep breath, feeling his pulse steady. He looked at his mother, then at the man. "You think you are safe?" he whispered under his breath. "But the impossible is about to happen." The courtroom, still tense, waited for the next move. Everyone thought they knew what would happen. Everyone thought the boy was just a child, but in a few moments, their assumptions would be challenged. And when that happened, no one would forget this day. The courtroom was silent now, but the air was thick with tension. Every eye in the room was fixed on the small boy and the man holding his mother. The boy's mind raced faster than ever. He knew this first move had to be clever, something that no one, not even the man, could anticipate. Slowly, the boy shifted his weight, pretending to stumble slightly. It was a small, almost accidental movement. The man's grip on his mother tightened reflexively, but the boy had predicted that. His heart pounded, but his face stayed calm. The audience leaned forward. Something was about to happen. They could feel it. Then, almost imperceptibly, the boy let his gaze drift toward the man's favorite side of the courtroom, the side he often leaned on when he felt confident. The man followed his eyes unconsciously. That tiny distraction was enough. The boy whispered to himself, "Now." With a sudden burst of courage, he lunged, not at the man's arm or body, but toward a small, unassuming object he had hidden earlier. A piece of chalk had fallen from his pocket moments ago, but now he grabbed another small item, a loose wooden block from the judge's bench, something ordinary, almost invisible. He flicked it toward the floor with a precise aim. The block rolled between the man's feet. The man startled, his eyes widening for a fraction of a second. It was enough. The boy took another small step, moving closer to his mother, careful not to make sudden gestures. Every movement had to be calculated. Every second counted. The audience gasped. "Did he just?" whispered one of the spectators. Others leaned forward, unsure whether to laugh or watch in awe. For the first time, the man's smug expression faltered. He tightened his grip, but his focus wavered. The boy's heart raced, but he remained calm. He had practiced this in his mind 100 times. Every detail, every reaction, every hesitation, he had predicted it. He had learned to read people like an open book, and now that skill was paying off. The man looked around angrily. "What are you doing?" he barked, but the boy was already moving, slipping one hand closer to his mother. The crowd held its breath. No one had ever seen a child behave like this. Then, the boy did something extraordinary. Using his small size to his advantage, he ducked slightly, rolled to the side, and freed his mother's arm from the man's grip. It was quick, subtle, almost invisible. The man's eyes widened in shock. He had never expected a child to act so fast, so cleverly. The mother gasped softly, her eyes wide with hope. He's doing it, she thought, trembling but amazed. She had always known her son was clever, but this courage surpassed even her highest expectations. The boy didn't celebrate yet. He knew the danger wasn't over. The man's hand shot toward him, furious now. But the boy anticipated the movement, stepping back just in time. The man's fist hit nothing but air. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Even the judges leaned forward, watching the unfolding scene with shock and disbelief. The boy whispered to himself, "Just a little more." He noticed the man's weight shifting to his left foot, another habit he had seen before. With a quick glance at his mother, he calculated his next move. He would need to use that small hesitation to gain more ground. Slowly, he edged closer, making sure to stay in the man's blind spots. Every step was measured, every movement silent but purposeful. Then, something surprising happened. One of the spectators, a man in the back, accidentally dropped his pen. It rolled noisily across the floor. The man holding the boy's mother flinched, distracted for a brief moment. That was the opportunity the boy needed. He grabbed his mother's hand gently and pulled her closer. "Stay calm," he whispered. "We're almost free." The man's face twisted in anger. He lunged forward, but the boy was ready. Using a clever twist of his small body, he avoided the man's reach and nudged his mother backward, away from danger. The court erupted in murmurs, some cheering quietly, some gasping in disbelief. But even as the boy felt a small surge of hope, he knew this was only the beginning. This first attempt had shown that he was clever and brave, but the man was still strong and dangerous. The boy had gained ground, yes, but the real challenge was yet to come. The courtroom remained tense. Judges, lawyers, and spectators all stared, unsure of what would happen next. For the first time, Laughter was replaced by a quiet awe. Everyone realized that this small boy was no ordinary child. He was smart, fast, and fearless, and he was ready to face the impossible. The boy looked at his mother, and she nodded, tears in her eyes. "We can do this," she whispered silently. The boy took a deep breath, preparing himself. This was just the first attempt, but it had worked. The man had been tested, and cracks had begun to show. The impossible was starting to feel possible. And in that moment, everyone in the courtroom felt it too, a strange, electric tension like the calm before a storm. Something bigger, something greater was about to happen. The courtroom was no longer filled with laughter. A tense silence hung in the air, broken only by the soft shuffle of feet and the anxious whispers of the crowd. The boy's small hand held his mother's tightly, his mind racing with every possible move. He had managed to gain some ground, but he knew the real challenge was only beginning. The man holding his mother's arm narrowed his eyes. His anger had grown, but so had his caution. He was no fool. He had underestimated the boy once, and he would not make the same mistake again. The way he shifted his weight, the tightening of his grip, the calculating look in his eyes, all told the boy that this would not be easy. The boy swallowed hard, but did not let his fear show. He knew that panic would ruin everything. He had to remain calm, think quickly, and act even faster. But suddenly, the man moved unpredictably, pulling his mother behind him like a shield. He turned toward the court, shouting, "Everyone, watch closely. This child thinks he can stop me? He is nothing." The spectators murmured nervously. Some stepped back in fear, while others leaned forward, curious to see what the boy would do next. The judges exchanged worried glances. Even most confident onlookers sensed the danger. The boy's plan had worked partially, yes, but now the obstacle before him was real, immediate, and threatening. He quickly assessed the situation. The man's movements were deliberate, controlled, and aggressive. Every step he took, every adjustment of his grip, was meant to intimidate. The boy realized that rushing now could be fatal. A single mistake, a single misstep, and his mother could be in real danger. The boy's mind flashed back to his training, to the hours he had spent learning to anticipate danger. He remembered the advice his father had given him. When the path seems blocked, find a crack. Always find a crack. Scanning the man's stance, the boy noticed a small opening, a subtle weakness in his posture, something the man had not intended to reveal. But it was risky. Exploiting it meant moving closer while the man was fully aware of every action. He had to be precise. One wrong move could make everything collapse. As the boy weighed his options, the man suddenly lunged forward, forcing the mother to stumble. The crowd gasped, and some spectators shouted in alarm. The boy's heart skipped a beat, but he kept his cool. He had expected this reaction, but the speed of the movement was faster than he had imagined. The obstacle had shifted, the man was adapting, and the boy needed to adapt faster. He remembered the small object he had hidden earlier, a simple wooden block he could use to create a distraction. Slowly, carefully, he dropped it near the man's foot. It clattered against the floor, rolling unpredictably. The man stumbled slightly, cursing under his breath. The boy seized the moment, moving his mother a small step away from danger. But just when he thought he had gained a little ground, another obstacle appeared. A sudden voice called out from the courtroom floor, a lawyer trying to intervene, stepping right into the chaos. The distraction drew attention away from the boy's careful plan. The man's grip tightened, and panic threatened to rise in the boy's chest. He clenched his teeth and whispered to himself, "Focus. You trained for this. Stay calm. Think faster." The boy realized that brute force would not work. He could not overpower the man. He could only outsmart him. Using every small advantage, the man's habits, the slight twitch of his wrist, the tiniest shift in weight, the boy began a delicate dance. He moved carefully, pulling his mother inch by inch toward a safer position, while keeping the man distracted. The court watched in silent awe. Some spectators leaned forward, holding their breath. Even the judges seemed unsure of how to react. No one had expected a child to face such a powerful man, and even fewer had expected the boy to survive this long. The boy's mother whispered to him, trembling, "Be careful." He nodded subtly, without breaking his focus. One more wrong step, and the obstacle could destroy everything. The man sensed the boy's intent and tightened his grip, his face twisted in fury. It was a dangerous game now, a battle of wits and nerves. Every second mattered. Then the boy noticed something, another small weakness. The man had leaned slightly to the side in his anger, exposing a gap. But reaching it would be dangerous. He had to act fast and precisely, or risk everything. The boy took a deep breath. The obstacle was huge, and the odds were against him. But he had already survived the first challenge. He had learned, adapted, and remained calm. Now, he had to turn this moment of danger into an opportunity. The courtroom was silent. The boy's heartbeat echoed in his ears, but his mind was sharper than ever. He looked at his mother, then at the man, and whispered under his breath, "This is just the beginning. I will find the way." In that tense silence, the audience felt it too. The thrill of the impossible, the edge of danger, and the courage of a boy no one expected to survive. The courtroom remained frozen in silence. Every eye was fixed on the small boy and the man holding his mother. The tension was so thick that even the whisper of paper sounded loud. The boy knew that if he hesitated now, everything he had achieved could collapse in an instant. The obstacle had tested him, but deep inside, he had a secret advantage, one that no one in the room could see coming. For weeks, he had been learning subtle tricks, small tactics that seemed ordinary but could change the tide when applied at the right moment. It wasn't brute force, it wasn't strength, it was cleverness, patience, and observation. And now it was time to use it. The man, confident at first, had begun to show cracks. His grip had tightened, but his eyes betrayed uncertainty. Even he had noticed that the boy was no ordinary child. The boy's first attempt, though small, had shaken him. Now, he had to act quickly, before the man regained his full composure. The boy glanced at his mother. Her face was pale, but there was trust in her eyes. That trust gave him courage. He whispered softly, just enough for her to hear, "Stay calm. I've got this." Suddenly, the boy noticed a small detail, a loose strap on the man's jacket, something that had been exposed as he adjusted his stance. In that split second, he realized this was his opening. It was a tiny vulnerability, almost invisible, but with precise timing, it could shift the balance in his favor. The boy moved closer, careful to stay out of the man's immediate line of sight. He kept his body low, his steps slow but deliberate. Every movement had been planned in his mind, every second accounted for. The spectators leaned forward, sensing something extraordinary about to unfold. Then, without warning, the boy acted. Using a subtle flick of his wrist, he nudged a small object, a piece of paper he had hidden earlier, toward the man's foot. It was simple, almost ridiculous, but effective. The man stumbled slightly, momentarily distracted. That brief hesitation was all the boy needed. With lightning-fast reflexes, he reached for the loose strap on the man's jacket. It was a small, delicate motion, but it shifted the man off balance. The crowd gasped. Judges leaned forward. Spectators exchanged amazed glances. The impossible was starting to take shape. The man realized what was happening and roared in fury. He lunged at the boy, tried to regain control, but the boy was already prepared. Years of secret practice had taught him how to anticipate movement, how to read the slightest sign of aggression. He sidestepped the man's reach, keeping his mother safe, and moved just enough to exploit the weakness he had discovered. In that instant, everything changed. The boy had transformed from the underdog into someone who could challenge the impossible. The court, which had laughed at him only moments ago, was now silent, captivated by every precise motion, every calculated risk. The boy's mind raced. He couldn't afford to lose focus now. Each step, each subtle movement, had to lead to one thing: freedom for his mother. He remembered the words his father had told him long ago: "When everyone underestimates you, that's when you can surprise them the most." And surprise them he would. He whispered under his breath, almost like a prayer, "This is the moment." With courage and cleverness combined, he made his move. The man, unprepared for such intelligence from a child, stumbled again. The boy seized the opportunity, pulling his mother a few steps away from danger. Her eyes widened in shock and relief. She had never seen him act with such precision, such bravery. But the turning point was not just about physical action. It was psychological. The boy had planted doubt in the man's mind. That doubt grew with each calculated move. The man's confidence wavered. His movements became slightly erratic. His focus faltered. And in a battle of wits, that hesitation was enough. The spectators felt it too. The tension was electric. Everyone realized that the boy was no longer just reacting. He was controlling the situation. The impossible, which had seemed so far away, was slowly becoming real. The boy's heart pounded, but his face remained calm. He whispered again to his mother, "Almost there, just stay close to me." At that moment, even the judges seemed to hold their breath. Every eye in the courtroom was glued to the boy and his mother. The man's anger had turned into frustration. He could not predict what the boy would do next. And that uncertainty, that hesitation, was the key. The turning point had arrived. The boy had changed the game. The impossible was no longer a dream. It was a challenge he could meet. And the court, the spectators, even the man himself, could sense it. The boy looked straight at the man, eyes blazing with determination. "This ends now," he whispered, though loud enough for the man to hear. "I will not let you harm her." A silence swept through the courtroom. For the first time, the man hesitated, unsure of what to do next. The boy's plan, his patience, and his cleverness had worked. The obstacle had been formidable, but it had been overcome. And in that moment, everyone realized something important. The small black boy, underestimated by all, was not just brave. He was unstoppable. The courtroom was electric. Every breath seemed loud. Every movement mattered. The black boy stood close to his mother, his small hands gripping hers tightly. His eyes were steady, sharp, and fearless. The man holding her was furious, his pride wounded and his control slipping. He had underestimated the boy once, and now he faced the impossible challenge of regaining it. The boy knew the stakes. This was it, the final moment. The first attempt had worked, the obstacle had tested him, and now, everything would be decided in these next few minutes. He could feel the energy in the room, the tension so thick it almost pressed against his chest. Judges, spectators, lawyers, they all leaned forward, waiting for the moment that could change everything. The man sneered, trying to mask his doubt. "You think you can win?" he growled. "You are just a child. Do you really believe you can stop me?" The boy didn't answer. He didn't need to. Every eye in the courtroom watched his next move, sensing that words were no longer necessary. Every second counted. He took a deep breath and focused. He remembered everything he had trained for, every small movement, every distraction, every calculation. The man was strong, but he had weaknesses, small cracks in his confidence that the boy had already spotted. If he acted carefully and smartly, he could use those cracks to his advantage. The man lunged suddenly, trying to grab the boy's arm. But the boy had anticipated it. He ducked low, rolling to the side, and pulled his mother slightly behind him. The man stumbled, shocked at the boy's speed. The crowd gasped. The impossible was becoming visible. The boy's mind raced. This was not about strength. It was about timing, precision, and courage. He noticed the man's hand twitching slightly, a sign of his impatience and frustration. That tiny motion gave the boy an idea. He whispered under his breath, "Just a little more." He reached for a small object he had prepared earlier, a piece of chalk he had hidden in his pocket. With a quick flick, he sent it skidding across the floor. It bounced off the man's shoe and rolled under the bench, drawing his attention for just a fraction of a second. That fraction was enough. The boy used it. He shifted his mother further away, careful not to make sudden moves. Every step, every motion was calculated. The man lunged again, angrier now, but the boy sidestepped perfectly. The momentum caused the man to trip slightly, and the courtroom erupted in murmurs and gasps. Even the judges could hardly believe what they were seeing. The mother whispered, "Be careful." "I am," the boy whispered back. "Stay close to me." Then came the cleverest part of his plan. The boy noticed the man's weight was unbalanced. He subtly guided his mother to a safe spot on the opposite side of the courtroom, just out of the man's immediate reach. With the man distracted, the boy used a swift motion to pull a loose strap from the man's jacket. The man stumbled, shocked, his pride completely shattered. The courtroom held its breath. Every spectator felt the tension. Every judge watched with disbelief. The boy had turned the impossible into a real moment, a feat of intelligence, courage, and timing. The man tried to regain control. He roared, moving faster, his grip tightening, but the boy had learned from every failed attempt and every challenge. He predicted the man's aggression and moved with flawless precision. Step by step, he forced the man backward, inching closer to victory. The spectators could hardly contain themselves. Some were cheering quietly, others gasping at every maneuver. They had come expecting entertainment, but what they saw was courage and brilliance. The boy was no longer just a child. He was a strategist, a hero, a force that defied expectations. The boy whispered to his mother one last time, "Almost there. Just stay calm." With one final calculated move, he made his approach. Using speed, intelligence, and the tiniest advantage he had discovered, he disarmed the man, not with violence, but with a clever maneuver that left the man off balance, exposed, and unable to continue. The impossible had been achieved. The courtroom exploded, not in chaos, but in awe. Judges, lawyers, and spectators all stared, mouths open, at the small boy who had outsmarted a powerful man. The mother clutched her son's hand, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she whispered, voice trembling. The man, humiliated and defeated, stared at the boy, unable to comprehend what had just happened. He had been bested not by strength, but by intelligence, courage, and sheer determination. The boy's eyes met the man's. "Never underestimate me," he said quietly, but with undeniable power. The court fell silent again, the echoes of awe filling the room. In that moment, the black boy had proven something extraordinary, that courage, intelligence, and love could overcome even the greatest odds. The impossible was no longer a dream, it was reality. And the crowd knew that this day, this moment, would never be forgotten. The courtroom was silent, holding its breath. Every eye followed the small black boy and his mother. The man, humiliated and off balance, struggled to regain control, but the boy's cleverness had left him completely exposed. The impossible, which no one had believed possible just hours ago, was now within reach. The boy's heart raced, but his face was calm. Every muscle in his body was poised for action. He knew that one wrong move could undo everything. He had come so far, endured the doubts, faced obstacles, and outsmarted a man much stronger than himself. Now, it was time to finish what he had started. He glanced at his mother, who was trembling but resolute. Their eyes met, and in that single glance, no words were needed. She trusted him, and that trust gave him strength beyond measure. The man made one last desperate attempt to assert his dominance. He lunged forward, trying to grab the boy, but the boy had predicted every move. He sidestepped gracefully, causing the man to stumble into the edge of the judge's bench. A gasp echoed through the room. The impossible had begun to take shape. The boy moved closer to his mother, keeping his voice low but firm. "Stay close," he whispered. "We're almost free." He had noticed the man's hesitation, the tiny gaps in his defense, and now he would use them all. Slowly, he guided his mother behind a small barrier, a chair, a table, anything that could create space between her and the antagonist. The man lunged again, but the boy was already one step ahead. Then came the moment that would be remembered forever. The boy, using his intelligence and the tools he had prepared in secret, executed a series of precise movements. He shifted the man's weight, distracted him with subtle gestures, and finally, with one calculated twist, forced the man to fall to the ground. The court erupted, not in laughter, not in panic, but in astonished silence. Everyone was frozen, staring at the boy, their jaws dropped in disbelief. The impossible had been done by a child. The mother fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She embraced her son tightly, whispering words of love and relief. "You did it! You really did it!" she said, her voice shaking. The man scrambled to his feet, humiliated and defeated. He could not comprehend what had just happened. He had underestimated the boy at every turn, laughed at his courage, and mocked his small size. And yet, here he was, outsmarted, powerless, and forced to witness the boy's triumph. The boy stood tall, small but unyielding. His chest rose with pride and determination. He looked around the courtroom, at the judges, the spectators, and even the man, and he spoke in a voice that carried calm authority. Never underestimate the heart of someone who loves. Never underestimate courage, no matter how small it appears. A quiet murmur spread through the courtroom. The judges nodded, some leaning forward with admiration. Even the spectators, who had come expecting entertainment, felt a deep sense of awe. This was more than a victory. It was proof that determination, intelligence, and love could overcome the impossible. The boy guided his mother to the front of the courtroom, away from danger. Her hands shook as she held his tightly, but her eyes were filled with pride. "You've given me hope and life," she whispered. The man, still recovering from the shock, looked at the boy one last time. There was a mixture of fear, respect, and disbelief in his eyes. He had been defeated not by strength, but by cleverness, courage, and unwavering love. The boy turned to the crowd. He did not boast. He did not celebrate loudly. He simply stood, calm and composed, letting the magnitude of what had happened speak for itself. The impossible had been achieved. Outside the courtroom, whispers spread like wildfire. "Did you see that? How did a child do that? It was impossible, but he made it happen." People would remember this day for years, telling the story of a boy who faced fear, danger, and the impossible, and won. As the mother hugged her son one final time, the boy whispered softly, almost to himself, "Nothing is impossible when you believe and when you fight for those you love." The court erupted in applause, not for spectacle, but for courage, brilliance, and the triumph of the human spirit. The impossible had been conquered by a small boy with a giant heart, and everyone present knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. The boy's eyes met his mother's once more. She smiled through tears, knowing that this moment would stay with them forever. And as the crowd slowly began to rise, murmuring in awe, the boy felt a quiet satisfaction. He had faced fear, outsmarted danger, and achieved the impossible. For the first time, he allowed himself a small smile. The impossible was no longer a dream. It was real.